afternoon. I'd like to call to order the July 14th regular meeting of the DeKalb Board of Registration and Elections. May we get the roll call, please?
Good afternoon, board members. When I call your name, please respond by saying here. Nancy Jester.
Here.
Anthony Lewis.
Here.
Dele Loman Smith.
Here.
Susan Motter.
Here.
And Carly Swift. Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Austin. May I get a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of approving today's agenda, please signify by raising your right hand and saying aye.
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 That passes unanimously, or 4-0. May I get a motion to approve the June 27th special call meeting minutes?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of approving the June 27th special call meeting minutes, please raise your right hand and signify by saying aye.
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 That passes 4-0. May I get a motion to approve the July 8th meeting minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor of approving the July 8th meeting minutes, please raise your right hand and signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
That also passes 4-0. It is now time for public comment.
Good afternoon. Public comments of 2 minutes or less may be made live via the teleconference. For those joining the meeting by telephone, please be aware your phone number may be displayed to the public viewing or participating in the online meeting. Citizens who attend the meeting via the Zoom link may join the public comment queue by raising their hand in the Zoom application, while citizens who attend the meeting via telephone may join the comment queue by pressing pound followed by the number 2. There will be no comment card, so when you are called upon, please state your name for the record. Also, please be conscious of speaking time so that everyone has an opportunity to provide input in the allotted time. Abusive, profane, or derogatory language will not be permitted.
Thank you very much, Ms. Austin. And just as a friendly reminder, if you would like to provide public comment, now is the time, #2, or use the raise hand feature. First request is from Colette Fricks. I'll ask Ms. Fricks to unmute. If she'd like to start her video, she may. And please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Sonia Colette Fricks. I live at 3889 Bea Way, unincorporated DeKalb, Atlanta 30340. And I am not feeling well today, but I jumped on this because I wanted to thank you specifically for 2 separate things. The first is thank you for taking the time to explain things to the public. I realize you're really not obligated to do that, but I do appreciate it. And the second thing is thank you for thinking in advance of our poll workers. I know you were thinking about that. You raised their stipend, and I know that they're on your mind. And I thank you because I realized watching the January 6th hearings on TV that I actually am a family friend of the Georgia poll worker that has been harassed. And I have no idea what any of your political beliefs are or how you vote, but I do know that each one of you care about our ability to vote in DeKalb County and the safety of our poll workers. And I just want to thank you for that. And just thank you. And like I said, I'm not feeling well, so leave it at that. Thank you.
And thank you so much for your comments. I appreciate your engagement and wish you well. There are no other hands raised. Let's do one last call, #2, or use the raise hand feature if you'd like to make a public comment. Madam Chair, that seems to exhaust all of the current requests.
Thank you. We are now on items for discussion, and I will recognize the Executive Director for item A, Director's Report.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon, everyone. Today in your packet, you have documents that make up the director's reports, and I want to start by bringing your attention to page 8, which is our budget document. I wanted to just provide a snapshot of where we are currently in this kind of mid-year of our budget. We have what, of course, we budgeted for the year, what we've spent to date, along with what we have remaining. If you recall, at our March meeting, we shared this document, and there were some line items that had a negative balance. And so we have been in discussions with our budget analyst about those items, and I've been informed that this is part of the mid-year process. The corrections will be to move those funds to the line item where that budget was allocated. And so it just hasn't been done yet, but it is in the works. And as part of the mid-year process, I do also want to update the board on our request that was made. We requested it's about a $4 million ask that would help us scale, bring to scale the kind of the staffing levels that we need to ensure that we are efficient in our election operations for November. It also includes a funding request for consultant services that we need to also maintain a continuity of services throughout the rest of this year, along with things such as content or learning management system. So we all know that training is imperative, and we want to be able to provide robust training for not only our poll workers, but our staff. And so those are some of the considerations that were in the full budget request, along with space. We are in discussions with the administration about a temporary location for some of our operations in the fall, as well as longer term needs and for space. And so those things are still being worked out. The entire mid-year process for the county is on hold right now, but I'm expecting to hear back from the administration regarding our next steps in this process. But as of right now, our budget analyst, is reporting that we are in, fiscally sound. There are no red flags. As we, look to our planning the future, we will continue to work with them to make sure that we stay on task and are within our budget allocation for the remainder of the year. So more to come on that as we hear back from the administration. I've been told that the requests are on hold and they're with the CEO and the COO at this time. So I'll provide additional updates.
Vice Chair Jester, you're recognized for a question, the director.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the update on that. Just because I want to ask you a question specifically about the budget. That way, we'll wait till the end if that's okay with you, just to interject. So just a couple of thoughts. So in looking at that, let me pull it up. So it looks like we have a significant overage on the personal services employee side. So they've got to reallocate between the different buckets that we have available, and looks like temporary services is then there's a significant balance in there so it seems like to me they were going to have to shuffle that between those internal buckets within our department. Is that sort of your understanding?
Yes, that's correct. So specifically, Vice Chair Jester, that line item 51-1-200, you'll see that is actually, it was there, as you recall, in March. So it was for the beginning of the year. We started in the wrong category.
Right.
And so where it should have been deducted from is 52, under
Mhm.
521104, which is temporary personnel, you'll
Right,
see that the
yeah.
budget is about the same there. So we
Okay.
still have some adjustments to make, but
Right.
those are the major two shifts that we will see once the
Okay.
mid-year process is completed.
Okay, so that's there'll shift between those buckets and that's fine. But there's still a need, obviously, for additional amounts because that would still leave us kind of, not in a good spot to finish the rest of the year, and we have a whole, significant election to run. The other thing, more of a comment, and this is great. Thank you. You're doing great, and I'm glad that you've got this open communication with the budget analysts and the team there and everything. This just my own 2 cents now about the way the budgeting process works, having been the chair of the finance committee on the board of commissioners for a while and understanding. I encourage you to, while certainly take the information that the administration gives you, I encourage you as a sort of an autonomous unit that reports to this board and not that sort of, hierarchy. I encourage you to go to the chair of the finance committee, I believe that's Commissioner Rader now, and make sure that you're in that queue to have a hearing before that committee, specifically because if you ask the administration, they're just going to say they'll take it, they've got whatever. But you need to be able to speak directly to the Board of Commissioners because generally what happens is they will amend the budget as well. So they'll get the budget recommendation from the administration and they'll look at it and they'll review it and they'll say, oh, this is great. But then what happens, like the district attorney or whatever department, particularly those departments that are autonomous, that have, they don't report directly to the CEO, like the courts, the judges or whatever, they'll come and they'll request a hearing before the finance committee, the FAB committee, and they'll say, hey, this is great. Here's why we want this thing, this budget adjustment. We agree with the administration's recommendation. Sometimes they'll say, well, we don't. We really want $1 million more because they left out this particular thing that we requested but didn't get. So you got to make sure that all your requests are specifically in what the administration passes on to the Board of Commissioners. And then furthermore, that you're going to the Board of Commissioners and asking for anything that was left out because they can amend the budget and it happens every year. There'll be a list of 10 or however many things that they want to do to adjust the administration's requested budget. But until they approve it, they'll usually put an amendment into their approval. So just make sure you're in touch with that. And it's not a flaw of the administration. Of course, they're going to say, oh yeah, we got you. But you need to know you have that avenue to go down to the Board of Commissioners. And that since you're an autonomous department, that's very appropriate for you to do. And I don't know that, and I'm sure your budget analyst is great, but you really need to direct your final concerns to the Board of Commissioners to make sure, the T's get crossed and I's get dotted there. So I would be reaching out to them to make sure you get to talk to that committee, if that makes sense. Because obviously you want those adjustments made, but you want also, within the buckets right now to fix that, but you want your budget requests. And until you see it in front of the Board of Commissioners as you requested it, usually it changes because the administration is a great filter. Everybody sends their stuff to the administration, they filter it and they don't give everybody what they want. But, so you need to be cognizant of that and make sure you're requesting to the commissioners, exactly what you want. And I'm sure Daley and myself, we'd be happy to go to any budget meetings that you need us to go to. I don't want to speak for everybody, but I'm pretty sure we would. So anyway, that's my 2 cents. Great job. Thank you for the budget presentation as part of your report.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Ms. Motter, you're recognized for comments or questions to the director.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Couple of questions. I just want to make sure we're providing this information so that the public understands. And thank you for all of this detailed information. It is truly a breath of fresh air. Anyone who's been watching these meetings for some time know that our board had not always received this kind of detailed information. So the amount of due diligence your team had to put together to come up with this report is very much appreciated. But going on to my questions, the $4 million ask,
Yes.
is that solely to scale the staffing levels, or is it the several buckets that you mentioned, the staffing levels, consulting services, and language learning management systems? Is it all three?
All and more. Those were
All and
the
more. Okay.
bigger buckets, but the majority of the request is actually going to fund new positions as well as the temporary and seasonal workers that we need. So personnel is what, you know, we're asking for. There is about right now 12 new positions. So half of the year worth of positions in fringe for the, you know, that, which is about 500,000, a little less than that. And then contracted services. So that would be some of the services that we've had, you know, leading up to today that we may continue to use if funded.
Yeah, and let's pause there for a moment, just so that the public understands. I assume you're talking about Eric Burton and his communication services that he has provided us in the past. I believe his contract has expired, and so there is a question mark or unknown regarding future funding of that contract and renewing that contract going forward.
That's one of the contracts, yes. And then we also, yes, but that is one that if we don't want to, you know, prolong that, if we are going to renew that, because of course, all of the things that we have leaned on that agency for, including the media relations and just strategically, you know, planning our marketing and things like that. Until we are able to build those types of capacities internally, we will want to continue to lean on, you know, that third party to be able to provide those services.
Okay. All right. And I think those are my only questions. I might follow up with you outside the meeting about some other things, but nothing of particular note.
And I'm happy to share with the board the, you know, proposed items that we did request. I was hoping that I could go have the meeting and kind of flesh out the details before sharing, you know, the document, because it's incomplete right now. And there are some, you know, placeholders that, you know, are not filled in. So as soon as I have more details, I will provide the information. And then of course, the mid-year budget is a public document, and we will share that as well as anything else that, you know, leading up to that finalization of things.
Yeah, and another, we've talked about people, we've talked about money, we talked about space. Now I'm wondering about equipment, any kind of equipment that you guys have your eyes on, and whether or not that's part of the $4 million ask, or.
And there are some, like that's a TBD, to be determined category, that we kind of have some built request in there, but we just this week, our warehouse folks were invited to a showcase to see equipment that houses everything in one space. So I think it's the scanners, the touch screens and everything. So it's easy to store, but it's also easy to transport and set up. And so, you know, we have an election in November. We don't want to make too many changes if we don't, you know, because we want to be able to go through the process and make sure we understand the equipment and know how to operate things. But there are some things that we may be able to incorporate into our current supplies in terms of equipment and other resources that would help us again, with our efficiency and facilitating our elections and to improve the voter experience. So yes, we are exploring that, and that is one of the line items that we're working on.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Yeah, I just wanted to ask the question so that the public can hear your response so they'll know that the department's thinking about everything from people to equipment to space, all of the things that the team needs in order to run a very efficient election. So thank you. That's all of my questions. I yield back. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Motter. Mr. Lewis, you're recognized for questions or comments to the director.
Thank you very much. Just one question, Ms. Smith. So the requests are on hold right now. Have we been given any indication as to how long that'll be or when we might have some sort of decision?
I have not been given an exact, time frame, but I will follow up with the administration tomorrow to see if there are any updates. We just know that things are on hold across the county at this time. So it's not just our department; it's the process itself that's in a holding pattern right now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Ms. Smith, you can continue with the rest of your report.
Okay. All righty. So if there are no more questions about the budget, we can look at page 10. I would like for you to review the one pager on the risk limiting audit that we conducted yesterday. Staff, temporary staff, as well as permanent staff participated in a mock risk limiting audit of the Secretary of State Democratic primary runoff as part of a statewide pilot of the Secretary of State's office. So we volunteered to conduct this mock audit. And what you see on the report is that we selected a risk limit of 5%, and the third party company that was contracted by the SOS Voting Works, they had a software that randomly selected the 5 batches for us to count. 4 were from election day. Looks like I am frozen.
No, you're good.
Okay, 4 of those batches were from election day, and 1 was from our South DeKalb Mall, which is one of our advanced voting locations. So as reported, typically you would expect a slight margin of error in a hand audit because of human error. However, there were no discrepancies in our final report, in our numbers. And so I'm very excited about that. I want to thank my staff and even our community partners. Our political party sent monitors to, serve as monitors for the audit. And we just finished with the results that we expected. And so it's a dry run for us for November. Well, we know we will have to conduct a risk limited audit of a statewide race. And so we volunteered to do this, and I think our efforts paid off in the end.
Thank you. Any comments or questions on this item before? Yes, Vice Chair Jester, you're recognized, and then I'll get to Mr. Lewis. Welcome, Ms. Swift.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ms. Smith, for that. And just for the public, and I just wanted to let everybody know I did get some pushback from GOP about the audit. I think in the end, I'm certainly personally speaking for just myself, not as a representative. Glad we did it. The results are great. Very good to see that. Thank you. I'm glad you did that. I'm glad you participated. Yeah, the timing, so we didn't give a lot of notice to people. That was just the issue. So I just wanted to say for everybody, to the extent we continue to do these, which are great, let's, as the more notice we can give the parties so they can more robustly participate in the process, the better. I know it caused some people some heartburn to get that last minute request, but it worked. So thank you, and look forward to doing more of these in the future.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Any other comments or questions on this part of the director's report? Oh, that's right. Thank you. Mr. Lewis, you're recognized.
Yeah, just a couple of questions. So, Ms. Smith, just this is really kind of picky on my part. Just picking apart some of the language. You call this a mock audit. Would you just explain that, why you use that term mock audit?
Sure, because that's what the Secretary of State's office called it. But I believe that, and then a typical audit would take place before certification, right? So it would be a part of that process. And because this was a pilot, a mock anything is a simulation of something that would occur in real life. And so I think that's the reason why we called it a mock audit. Everything, was the same in terms of the processes, but it was just an exercise that we volunteered to do as part of a pilot of the Secretary of State's office.
So this was never seen as an actual audit, so to speak, but more or less a test of what we would do in the future. I mean, obviously, we went through the process, so there was an audit that happened, but it's not seen as, so just to give you an idea, I've been requesting robust RLAs. So, my thinking is if we did one, I would like to have seen like a larger sample size of races and precincts and voters and votes cast. But it seems like what you're telling me here is this was never meant to be something like that.
I don't know. I mean, the direction, I don't know what the intent in terms of the folks at the Secretary. I can't speak for the Secretary of State's office, right? But I do know that we performed the audit as if we were performing an audit for certification of a statewide election.
Okay. And I agree with Ms. Jester that the results are definitely very encouraging. That we didn't find any errors in this particular race. There is an agenda item that is going to that I wanted to use to discuss this. I'll wait till we get there to ask you a couple more specific questions so we can move on through your report. Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Any other questions on this particular item for Ms. Smith? And I thought just for the benefit of the public while we're on this, the Vice Chair alluded to some of the questions or discussion that was going on, but the Secretary of State gave counties the invitation to volunteer for a risk limiting audit as part of their pilot, either on the primary or the runoffs. I think anybody who's been following this board knows what our staff was doing for the weeks following the primary and was not in a position to take advantage of that, even though the director had planned to do that initially. That was not something that was in our capacity based on the activities that were necessary following the primary. But they did take the opportunity to do that for the runoff because that opportunity was extended. And so that's how we ended up with this. And as she mentioned, the Secretary of State selected the particular batches that they looked at and the like. Okay, Ms. Smith, you can go ahead and continue with the rest of your report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Next, I'd like to just draw your attention to page 11 of your packet, which is the analysis or report of the analysis of the May 24th Commissioner District 2 scenario situation that occurred. And so I believe in one of our meetings or two of our meetings in June, we mentioned that we were going to prepare a statement for the public to better understand the numbers, the reports that were posted, and the sources of the error. And so we had a lot of questions about the Commission District 2 race, and we did our due diligence. Our findings have been shared in this packet beginning on page 11. They are posted online as well. And I just want to reiterate that the security, integrity, and accuracy of our elections are our top priorities here at DeKalb VRE. And the process we implemented to address the challenges regarding the Commission District 2 race yielded an outcome that I can stand behind. We all can stand behind. And so what you have here in the report, again, is our kind of a Q&A, or an FAQ type of setup, and also just further explanation of what we've communicated throughout the process. And so it's in one document, it's online. We've shared it with our partners at the Secretary of State as well. And so we're hoping that it just, again, provides a more transparency about things that occurred in May and beyond.
Any questions or comments to the director on this? I will just take the liberty of thanking the team for putting this together. We know it took some time to do this, and I, for one, appreciate the thoroughness and deliberateness of your approach. I feel as if this is a good balance of detail and explanation. I found it helpful and somewhat, I was able to follow it and comprehend the messaging. And there's just some really important information in here. So it's already been, the AJC's already picked it up and done some coverage on it. Hopefully there will be more sharing of this information for those who have questions. And can have the confidence that our staff are working diligently to catch or prevent an issue like this that could occur in the future, and understand how we got to where we got to, as well as some of the confusion that came up during that process where people were confusing ballots cast with total votes, and it caused a lot of heartburn and anxiety, and so hopefully that is clarified through this document. So thank you and the team for putting this together. Last call for any questions or comments on this. Yes, Vice Chair, you're recognized.
Thank you. Yeah, and I've done a cursory look at it because we didn't get it until last night, so I haven't had time to just really go through it. So for the public and for you, I may have some more questions and comments about it when I have the time to really sit down with it. I just haven't, given that we got it last night. But it seems, congruent with what we were all thinking so it's consistent with that. And I'm glad it's gotten coverage. And so to that point, I would just say, to the extent we can publish this, put it as a press release component part on our website, or, if that's, if everybody thinks that's a good idea, I think it's a good idea, because I think it's, it's transparent. That was obviously, there was a big brouhaha about it. And, there's a lot of coverage, and people, ask me often, well, what happened there? You tell them, but having something you can direct them to would certainly be nice. Like, hey, go and read this, it's a couple pages, and it'll get, it'll take you, line by line, exactly how we got from point A to point B. I think that would be real helpful if we could make a press release specifically about this and put it out there for the public. And it would just, I think that would be helpful from a transparency perspective. And then share it, we can share it on our social media channels as well. Like, here's this link. If you have interest in knowing how, everything was checked and audited and buttoned up for that particular race that we had issues with, here's how you can read about it. And I'm proud of it. It's not great when there's ever any problems, but I'm very proud of this, linear process that happens. I mean, not some things took us a little bit longer than I wanted, but I'm proud of the whole process overall and how it got done and it was accurate. So I think we should share that with the public more specifically.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Ms. Smith, anything else on the director's report that you want to bring to our attention?
It's just one last item on page 19, Madam Chair.
You're recognized.
Okay, thank you. So this notice of bond election. So it's my understanding that in the past, the process for special elections were mostly handled internally in the department. And so as we move to, improve our processes and efficiency within the office, I thought, that it would be a good idea to share this information with the board. And there's an action item later that's similar to this, but this request on page 19 was submitted by the Assistant City Manager of the City of Dunwoody. I was contacted by Vice Chair Jester actually about this bond election that was potentially underway, and so we reached out to them, and they followed up with an email with this preliminary document. And in the event that their city council adopts this resolution, which they're meeting on July 25th, they will, be calling for an election in November. And so I will follow up with the board after July 25th, so later this month on this, but I did want to, bring it to your attention as we, again, just prepare for efficient, enhanced procedures and processes internally and establishing the protocol going forward for how this board wants, things to be done. And so that's all that I have as far as the director's report is concerned.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Okay, next under items for discussion is commissioners' comments. And let's see. Oh, I need to check the next screen.
Madam
And
Chair.
yes, I see Commissioner Davis Johnson and Commissioner Terry and just advise. I'm not seeing. Okay, Commissioner Terry, I'll go ahead and recognize you and see if Commissioner Davis Johnson is able to come on the screen if she'd like to be recognized after.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. And I do not have any comments today, but I am here and appreciate just the discussion. And thank you very much for the opportunity to speak, but no comments today. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Davis Johnson, did you wish to speak? Not sure she can.
I will ask her to unmute. She does have co-host, but she may have, here she comes. Oh, she's in the car. All right, let's see if we can get her to unmute.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay, great. But I don't have any comments. I'm surprised that my colleague didn't have any. But I tell you, I just like to say thank you to this Board of Elections. You all are doing an excellent job. I'm especially pleased with our executive director, and I think that this is what the county have been waiting for. And
it appears that we lost her. No, she is completely off at the moment.
Okay. It's always unfortunate to lose somebody when they're in the middle of praising you, but we will just sort of use our imaginations to complete the rest of her comments if she's not able to rejoin us. And thank you to the commissioner in absentia. Okay, so let's move on to item C. And that was a request that was made by Mr. Lewis. And so, Mr. Lewis, you're recognized for that item.
Thank you. I want to ask just a couple of follow-ups real quick to Ms. Smith regarding this portion from your director's report. I remember you sent us an email that stated something related to a second round. Would you explain that?
Yes, and actually we did receive an email last night from what's the name? Voting Works. Apparently there was a coding error on their end. So I don't know if they were expecting a 0% error. And I think, honestly, we think that may have been the issue. They were expecting, up to 5%. And so they emailed and said that there was a coding error, something on their end where it said that we would need to do a second round, but they fixed, whatever the glitch was on their end and let us know that things were fine. So we're done.
So okay, just to be clear, there's no need for a second round.
No, there's no need for a second round. And we found that out late last night.
Okay. The Secretary of State gave us the option of doing it either choosing the runoff or the primary, correct, for the audit. And we chose the runoff. Was there any sort of decision-making process or parameters that you used to decide whether or not to do the runoff versus the primary?
Right. Thank you for asking that question. So when we initially received the information from the Secretary of State, we were in the process of certifying, I believe, our May 24th primary. And so we were still, rounding off some of the activities related to that race. And so we could not carve out resources to beat the initial deadline that they requested for the May 24th primary. So later, a few weeks later, we did receive another final opportunity to participate for the runoff election. And at that time, we decided that we could allocate resources to conduct a runoff audit. So we did. So it was just timing.
Okay, thanks. And so my main reason for asking for this to be part of our discussion today is I know moving into the general, we want to do another RLA after the general. And since this one, in my opinion, was a very small audit, I want to, as we gear up towards this for the general, I want us to put in mind that maybe we can expand on the amount of races that we audit. So for example, instead of doing, say, one statewide race, can we do some local races as well? So that we can have and more than one statewide race, so that we can have a larger picture of what's going on in case there is some sort of margin of error, if there are any consistencies or anything like that. I think that with a larger sample size, that we would have a better picture of what may be happening. And if, with the larger sample size, we still get something and no errors, then that's outstanding. But when we have something, in this particular case, we chose about 7% of the votes cast. In my mind, at least, it's great, the results, but it still leaves a little bit of question. So I'd like to see us expand that amount to trying to cover at least 20% of the votes cast. I'm not as sure what that would entail, but we can start talking about it so that when the time comes, we can have whatever needs to be done, whatever needs to be in place. That makes sense to you. So that's it. That's really what I wanted to get out, is that, let's try to do a more robust RLA for the general.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. I want to Okay, I'm going to recognize Ms. Swift, and I'll circle back to Ms. Smith before we conclude. Ms. Swift, you're recognized.
Thank you. I guess I have a question or clarification point for Ms. Smith. So in the RLA that was conducted of the runoff, did we conduct it based on the guidance for best practices? And is there a percentage of the vote that is recommended? My first question.
Mhm. Yes, we did everything based on the guidance that we received from the vendor that the Secretary of State's office used for this audit. And so we were able to, I believe, select whether we wanted like up to 5% or up to 10%. And so once we provided them the information, they gave us further instructions in terms of how many ballots that we needed to, count.
Okay, so it wasn't necessarily there was an option to do more than what the defined term amount in the audit was. I guess what I'm trying to understand is because as I understand audits generally, it is an audit of a universe, and that usually means that you wouldn't check, for example, up to 20%. There would be some defined portion. And so I guess what I don't want us to do is create something that goes outside of what would be a standard audit, but understanding that we want to make sure we are auditing it and auditing enough races so that we get comfortable that there are no issues. But I just wanted to confirm that we did the audit consistent with the guidance that we were given.
That's correct. We did.
Thank you, Ms. Swift. Ms. Motter, you're recognized.
Yeah, I sort of want to follow up on Ms. Swift's comments and questions. If we as a board and as the VRE decides to expand what races to perform an RLA for the fall race, for the November race, I want to make sure that, and I think I'm about to get confirmation, we have state election board rules. We have other guidance from the state, and it's that guidance that will inform us as to how to conduct the audit. But I do have a question with regard to the selection of races, and perhaps this is a question for the attorneys to research offline after this meeting. Is there any guidance around how we would select additional races to perform an RLA? And so I'll pause there, and then I'll have a follow-up comment or question.
Ms. Smith, you're recognized.
Thank you. So in terms of the additional races, I would defer to our attorneys for that. I don't know the answer to that as far as, how we would go about selecting that. I can say that I do know from speaking with our liaison at the Secretary of State's office that they are going to select a statewide race for us to audit, along with giving us the instructions that will include the percentage of ballots we will have to count. So that, okay. I can say that, but I would defer to our law partners for.
Okay. Part two, if we were to select additional races, how would that impact our staffing? What kind of staff needs would we have to perform these additional races? And would that limit us in the number of additional races to perform an RLA? And you might not know the answer at this point, but I'm just thinking out loud.
So let me ask Ms. Vanderels if she has any knowledge of that. This is, it seems to be related to the first part of your question, and I want to see if she has any insight on that. Ms. Vanderels.
Yes, I don't believe the current guidelines that the state has issued, whether through state election board regulations or official election bulletins, speak at all to selection of the race by individual counties, but we will do some more research to verify that, as well as any additional parameters or requirements under the law for risk limited audits.
Thank you. Go ahead, Ms. Motter.
Yeah, and my final comment on is, and this is sort of my perspective on audits. Full disclosure, before becoming a lawyer, I was a certified public accountant. So I was in close proximity of audits that accountants do. And with respect to those types of audits, there's typically a sample that is selected. Parameters are set based on a particular client, a whole variety of reasons. So I am assuming with the state guidance that we would have for risk limiting audits, that we would have similar parameters as to what our resistance, so what constraints we would have in determining sample size, i.e. the number of races, the number of precincts, what have you, in terms of the selection. So these kinds of parameters are usually researched and set by professionals who have knowledge and experience in this area, which quite frankly, I don't have, and I imagine none of our board members have. So I would strongly look to what the state will tell us or advise us with respect to the standards on the sample size, the races selected and whatnot. So I will defer for now and look forward to our attorneys giving us additional information. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Motter. Mr. Lewis, if it's okay with you, I'm going to recognize the vice chair just to give everyone the opportunity to weigh in and then recognize you. Vice Chair, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My comments is, on this, and sort of maybe a question or a comment to Ms. Vanderels as well. So just to make sure she's listening. So for the public, we did this pursuant to direction, participating in a pilot program with the state on a voluntary basis. We were so busy with obviously what was going on in the District 2 race during the primary to participate in this voluntary program. So, and we got sort of a last minute, yeah, you can still hop in and participate in this invitation from the state. So that was what kind of created the last minute for the parties to participate. So that's generally not going to be the case. And we certainly don't want that to be the case because we want to be as transparent and participatory as we can. But that's how we got to this point. And furthermore, it's our understanding that the state is going to do and require some more of these types of audits in November. So now we've got this one under our belt. We kind of understand their process and communication and all that. So, everybody be on notice for getting volunteers for this from the party's perspective for November, because this is going to happen then. And that those will be parameters driven by the state and how they tell us. What I wanted to sort of ask Ms. Vanderels to look at, and I don't think there is anything that prohibits DeKalb itself from coming up with a policy to do our own types of audits or reviews and however we want to call them. So, that is something I just want to put out, as we talk about maybe doing, the retreat for the board. Maybe this is something we can put on that retreat agenda. Do we want to adopt a policy on this specifically for us, to the extent that Ms. Vanderels can advise us that it doesn't run afoul of any kind of, legal issue or anything, that we're able to do some of our own tests and compliance work internally, just to make sure as an elections board and elections department that we're operating like we want to. So if you could look into that, and maybe that can inform something we talk about at our retreat. And if we want to develop a policy on this, two things. I'm in agreement with what Ms. Motter talked about. There are people that, have a lot of expertise in this, and it says, that can give us guidance on this would be a really good policy of how to come to, here's what would be a good system to look at from an audit perspective after every election or after these types of elections, that kind of thing. So I'm very interested in maybe even having somebody like that come to our retreat. I don't know if we have enough time to get somebody like that, but if we could, that would be great. And maybe then the board can, I would envision us maybe adopting a policy then to then guide the administration. And that way, and then one piece of information I'd add in that I would like to see in a policy, and this is feedback that the GOP is giving me. I don't know what the Democratic Party is telling y'all, and probably similar. Because we did the runoff, there were no Republican elections to look at all, and I got pushed back like, why are we looking at one of those? Like, well, there isn't one to look at, So there was, I think, a nonpartisan race. But again, this was driven by the Secretary of State's office to the public so that we were told what to do. So, but hopefully if we do come up with a policy, it would include, looking at both parties, looking at, sampling nonpartisan, looking at each, so we can make sure that all the different types of ballots that are cast get a review of some sort in any kind of policy we develop. So anyway, to the extent we can get some expertise on that, some legal advice, Ms. Vanderels, that would be great. Those are my comments on that. Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Lewis, for putting this on the agenda. I think it's a good discussion.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Mr. Lewis, you're recognized.
Thank you very much. This just kind of goes along, I think, with both Ms. Mata and Ms. Jester were saying. I know some of the board members are attorneys and have been accountants, but my background is more in the world of science. So I'm always defaulting to the scientific method, which doesn't always fit with the legal world. But so my thinking here is that it would seem to me that if we as a board and as a department had some idea of what we wanted to achieve through one of these audits, then the Secretary of State or professionals who specialize in these sorts of activities can guide us into how we can achieve what we want to achieve as a board and a department. So I would rather just have something in mind that we would take to them. And if it's something that can't be done, then they can tell us. But at least I would rather us sort of take to them what we want, and rather than us sit back and just take what their guidance, so to speak, their so-called, I guess you would call it the parameters that they set. So maybe there's something that we would like that can be achieved within those parameters, or maybe if necessary, we could go outside those parameters. There's something that's allowed. So that's really the last thing I want to say. But I know that this is something that's going to be that we want to try to do in November, and it's like Ms. Mata said, we have staffing issues and so many other things that we have to take into account. That's why I'm trying to get it on the book in the discussion early on before then. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. And I wanted to just clarify just a couple of items in this discussion. One is that these types of audits, if you will, I mean, there are capital A audits and lowercase a audits. The staff have done lowercase a audits as a part of the process of preparing for certification. That's just built into the process. And they will audit, little a audit, a number of races to double check and ensure that the numbers tick and tie. And that's how we reach the level of confidence that we do prior to certifying and prior to receiving the recommendation from the director to certify. So there may be just some opportunity there for us to just hear during the certification process more about the process that the staff underwent and undergoes under regular circumstances for those races. But in terms of the capital A audit, it is my understanding that that is dictated and driven by the state, and it's not, and Ms. Vanderels will will confirm this. But that is a process that is managed by the state. Anything that is called a risk limiting audit or considered an official risk limiting audit is under the purview of the Secretary of State's office and not something that we can control or expand. Is what I expect to hear based on what we've done in the past. I believe the first year we did that was in 2020. Where the Secretary of State had the entire state do that. The other thing that I would just remind us is that the party races only apply to a primary. So when we get to November, we're not going to have Democratic and Republican races to look at. It's a general election. And so we'll only be looking at those general races. Okay. Any other questions on this item? Okay. So I'll return the floor to you, Mr. Lewis, for item D, since you raised that issue as well.
Great, thank you. So as you all know, we get numerous requests lately to see ballot images that usually have to go through our legal department. But we know that that's actually all of that is public record. And I believe the staff some of the staff members have had the same idea, is that we could possibly go ahead and publish those ballot images shortly after the election so that the public has direct access to it immediately rather than having to go through a legal process. So I want to see if that's something we could just go ahead and decide to do in upcoming elections.
Were you directing that to Ms. Smith or to Ms. Vanderels or to the board?
That was to the board.
Okay.
I can ask Ms. Smith directly if that is something that that the department can do.
Okay. Ms. Smith, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we do want to be able to do that. We want to be able to provide ballot images, shortly after the election. We are trying to figure out what the capacity of our website is right now, because that's a lot of I don't know which gigabytes, I don't know what they're called, but a lot of stuff to have to load onto a website. So we would have to work with our county IT department to figure out if there is something additional that we will need to, and I don't know if CIO Matowski has that information right now, but this is something that we're hoping to have in place for the fall. And I don't think that it's going to take much to do, but there is some adjustments that, something that would need to be done on the back end to be able to, hold those images.
Okay, thank you.
And yes, and Vice Chair Jester did have her hand raised. If I could just, to what Ms. Smith said, as a reminder, SB 202, which is what directed the publication of the ballot images, also stipulated that the Secretary of State was to provide a format and a forum for counties to upload. That was not something that was supposed to be a responsibility of all 159 counties. That was a task that was supposed to be owned by the Secretary of State's office. So all of the open records requests and all sorts of other things that we got was extra work for the county attorneys, for our staff, and everybody who was involved in that process. That was supposed to have been owned by the state. So hopefully that will be in place. But if we have to do something that is literally an unfunded mandate that we're picking up and displacing other responsibilities in order to satisfy. But Vice Chair Jester, you're recognized.
Thank you. So to that point, thank you, Madam Chair, for informing, I like the public to hear those types of things. It's very important for us to understand the construct there. Do we know, have we been getting any information on, are they working on a module like that? Do we know? I don't know who could answer this. Ms. Smith, do you know? Have you been told anything?
Ms. Smith, you're recognized.
Thank you. I am not aware of a module of that, magnitude yet, but I will follow up with our liaison to see if that is underway. We do know that it's allowable, it's not anything that we have to get permission to do.
Well, yeah, I'd be interested to see where they are in their process with that.
Okay.
That'd be helpful, but I salute you, and I think it's a great. I'm all about free data, but everything be very transparent. So my other question is, what does a ballot image look like? What information is contained on it? So I asked that very earnestly. I haven't really seen that. What does that contain?
So it has, all of the races on like either 1 or 2 pages. And then the third page is like the receipt. So, what you mark on the,
So it's each ballot that every voter completed with their marking, but without any, is there any identification on that ballot? Do we know, does it say the person's name? It doesn't say their name.
No, there's just like a barcode or something like that, but there's no
connection to an individual voter. So you
not that.
Okay. No. Okay. So, but it shows, so that's, and to the public, that's why there's just so much data, because it's every single vote cast in its sort of way. So, okay.
Exactly.
That's what I thought. I just want to make sure my understanding was correct on that. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Ms. Motter, you're recognized, and then we'll get to Ms. Swift.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I think I had a similar question as Vice Chair Jester regarding essentially around privacy concerns, whether or not there is personally identifiable information as to how a voter votes, since it's already built into our Georgia Constitution that our votes are private and must be private as such. So I am curious, and I recognize the fact that we are waiting on the state to provide the parameters as to how these ballot images are going to work. And I just wanted to state for the record that I think this is a good idea from the standpoint of transparency, as long as we are protecting voters with respect to their right to privacy as to how they voted in particular races. So I had another question, but unfortunately it has left my head. I may come back if I remember it. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Motter. Ms. Swift.
Thank you. And it's just a follow-up just for the public that the ballot image is not, it's multiple pages for each image. So when the chair, when the executive director talks about the amount of documents that have to be uploaded, it's significant because the ballot image is multiple pages. So it's the page or multiple pages, depending on how many races are on the ballot, plus an additional page, which is the transmission. So I think this is a great, it's a great idea. And it's unfortunate that we have to spend our resources and time to figure it out, and that was not included in the original legislation or how it was supposed to be enacted. But I do think that it may allay some of the concerns that we receive and some of the requests that we receive.
Thank you, Ms. Swift. Ms. Motter, you're recognized.
Thank you. I now remember, since all of this information is going to be housed eventually, as we're thinking out loud here on our website, I assume that our terrific IT department, Mr. Metelsky and his folks, will have the appropriate security protocols around this information being loaded. What I'm fearful of is someone taking these and then presenting these ballot images, since they are reflective of someone's vote, showing up with these ballot images and saying, hey, you forgot these ballots. So I assume there's going to be some kind of security protocols, watermarks, or whatever to prevent others who may have bad intent to use these ballot images for whatever reason. So, and I would assume that the state would provide us guidance on that. So just thinking out loud, I love the idea of transparency, but it needs to be secure and there needs to be security protocols around that. So that's all I had. Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you, Ms. Motter. Okay, Mr. Lewis, did you have anything else you wanted to address on this item, since this is your item?
No, that's all. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're on items for decision, and Ms. Smith, you're recognized to give us some context, and then I'll ask for a, I'm going to recognize you to give some context, and we'll go from there.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. So action item page 26 is the City of Atlanta. It's the request from the City of Atlanta for DeKalb County to conduct its special election in November. And so I'm requesting that for the duration of the 2022 election cycle, that the board authorize the executive director to approve requests received from a municipality to conduct a special election where the request is received pursuant to the board's contract with the municipality, and the county is already conducting an election on the date requested by the municipality. And so that's the request for consideration today.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Ms. Motter, would you like to make a motion?
Sure. I move that for the duration of the 2022 election cycle, the board authorize the executive director to approve requests received from a municipality to conduct a special election where the request is received pursuant to the board's contract with the municipality and the county is already conducting an election on the date requested by the municipality.
We have a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion of this item? Questions? Okay, seeing none, all in favor of the motion as stated, please raise your right hand and signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed? And that passes unanimously. Thank you. Ms. Vander Els, is there a need for executive session? I didn't think there was.
No need for an executive session today.
Thank you. Okay, so we are at board comments. I think I'm going to go back the other way and start with Vice Chair Jester.
No, I have no comments. Thank you for a great director's report, and just keep us informed about that budget. That's going to be key for us. Appreciate that and adding that in, but great meeting. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Mr. Lewis?
Just as always, I want to thank the staff and Ms. Smith for all of their work that they've done up to this point, getting us through the primary and the runoff, and the information that she provided today is very helpful. And I agree with Ms. Motter's comments that it's very nice to have this supplied to us in the manner in which she's doing it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Motter?
Yeah, I just have one comment for our county attorney, Tristan Waits. She's been the party who's been drafting our minutes for us. And I really appreciate her efforts to provide sufficient content and detail so that the public, those members of the public who don't attend our meetings, can go back and read the minutes or look at the video. But surely go back and read the minutes, which are required by law. And there's now a lot of detail in there so the public knows that we are conducting business on their behalf and they'll know what we're doing. So I just want to give a quick shout out to Ms. Waits and thank her for what she's been doing for us here at the board. And of course, the staff as always, and our director, Ms. Smith. And thank you for volunteering for the RLA. It's very much appreciated. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Motter. Ms. Swift?
Thank you. I actually don't have any comments today and echo what the board has already said. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and I will just make sure I'll echo the thanks to Ms. Waits for the work that she did and just acknowledge for the rest of our colleagues that actually the staff has now taken that over. And Mr. Catherwood, as our board liaison, has started doing those minutes for us. And so I'm sure that that gratitude extends just as heartily to him that Ms. Motter just mentioned. So thank you for a great and efficient meeting. And I will now ask for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And thank you. And that passes unanimously and we stand adjourned. Thank you.